My name is Eric, and for the past 15 years, I've proudly served as a Navy officer. It's not an easy life. Imagine being gone for months at a time, waking up to the sound of alarms instead of your wife's soft laughter, eating rations instead of home-cooked meals, and always wondering if you'll make it back home. But I loved my job. The pride of wearing that uniform, of serving my country, kept me going through the toughest days. Still, there was something else, someone else, who kept me grounded. My wife, Clara. She was my anchor, my reason to come home in one piece. Every deployment, every sleepless night on the base, was bearable because I knew she'd be waiting for me. I could picture her smile, the way her eyes lit up when I walked through the door after months apart. Those rare days I got to spend with her felt like stepping into another world, a world where I wasn't just an officer, but a husband, a man loved and needed. I'd built my life around the belief that, no matter how far I was from home, Clara and I were unshakable. I never doubted her loyalty. I never questioned her love, until the day I came home early, unannounced, and found out how wrong I was. I'll never forget the day I got the news. An unexpected 5-day administrative leave. For a Navy officer like me, those moments were rare. A chance to break away from the regimented life at sea and spend time with the one person who made it all worthwhile. My wife. The drive home was one of the longest I'd ever taken. It wasn't just the miles, it was the anticipation. I kept replaying memories in my head, moments of laughter, quiet nights on the couch, and the way she'd throw her arms around me when I came home from deployment. Those memories kept me going during the months I was away. Our recent phone calls hadn't been like they used to be. Her voice lacked its usual warmth, and her laughter, normally so genuine, sounded forced, hollow even. She always said she was fine when I asked, but something felt off. I told myself it was nothing. Stress, maybe. She'd been alone for too long, holding down the fort while I was out serving my country. That kind of isolation can wear on anyone. She just needs me, I thought. Once I'm home, everything will be okay. As the car wove through familiar streets, my mind filled with memories. I thought about the way she'd greet me at the door, her face lighting up like I was her whole world. I imagined her laugh, the way it always had a way of melting away the weight I carried. And, of course, I pictured us sitting on the couch together, her head resting on my shoulder, the simple silence of being home with someone you love. But as we turned onto our street, I noticed her car, her trusty little hatchback, wasn't in its usual spot by the driveway. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she'd run out for groceries or errands. But then I noticed something else. The curtains were drawn. That wasn't like her. She loved natural light, especially in the mornings. I could practically hear her voice telling me how sunlight helped her think when she was working on her scripts. She'd sit by the window with her laptop, letting the light pour in while she typed away. I wonder if she was really home. I leaned forward, squinting at the house as the taxi slowed down. The house was too quiet when I stepped in. Usually, when I came home, there was something to greet me. The faint hum of the TV in the background, the sound of music from her favorite playlist, or the comforting smell of something cooking in the kitchen. But today, there was nothing. Maybe because she has no idea I was coming. I stepped inside, calling her name. Clara. My voice echoed in the stillness. No answer. At first, I thought maybe she'd stepped out to run an errand, but something didn't feel right. My senses sharpened. A reflex I had learned during years in the Navy. I started noticing things I wouldn't have picked up on otherwise. By the door, a pair of sneakers caught my eye. They weren't mine. They were larger, too big for Clara, and not a brand or style I'd ever seen her buy. My chest tightened, but I told myself to stay calm. Maybe they belonged to a guest, a family member stopping by. Then I caught it, faint but unmistakable. A scent lingered in the air, a cologne I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine, and I knew every product I owned. This was something different, something foreign. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My instinct screamed at me to be alert, to prepare for anything. Slowly, I moved further into the house, my steps careful and deliberate. "Clara," I called again, louder this time. Still nothing. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but something about that silence felt wrong. Very wrong. As I walked down the hallway toward our bedroom, I could hear faint sounds coming from behind the closed door. At first, it was hard to make out a murmur, then a low laugh. I paused outside the door, my heart pounding. I told myself I was imagining things, that this was nothing, that I'd been gone too long and my mind was playing tricks on me. But the laughter came again, low and intimate, and my hands clenched into fists. Without thinking, I pushed the door open. My eyes took in the scene in an instant, a scene that will haunt me forever. There she was, my wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world, tangled up with a stranger in our bed. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably not me. He was black, and while that detail didn't matter in the grand scheme of betrayal, it stood out to me like a splash of paint on a blank canvas. Another way this moment felt so foreign, so unreal. Time seemed to freeze. My mind screamed at me to do something, yell, hit, demand an explanation, but my body wouldn't move. I just stood there, staring, as the weight of what I was seeing crushed me from the inside out. I had faced danger and chaos in my career, but nothing had prepared me for this kind of pain, this kind of betrayal. They both froze when they saw me. My wife's face turned pale, her eyes wide with shock and guilt. The man scrambled to cover himself, mumbling something I couldn't hear over the deafening roar in my ears. My gaze locked on hers, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with. But that image shattered as quickly as it came, replaced by the harsh reality of what she had done. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My military training took over. All I could do was stand there, drowning in the suffocating silence that followed. "Get dressed," I finally said, my voice low but firm. "Both of you, meet me in the living room." My wife, Clara, couldn't even look at me. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she fumbled to pull on her clothes. She looked like a child caught stealing, but this wasn't some small mistake. This was our marriage, our trust, shattered into pieces. The man, on the other hand, surprised me. He didn't panic or try to defend himself. He stood there, silent for a moment, and then said, "I'm sorry. I'll leave if you want." "No," I replied, sharper this time. "You're staying. I need answers." He nodded without argument, his face unreadable. I couldn't tell if he felt ashamed, indifferent, or just resigned. As I turned to leave the room, I felt the weight of their silence pressing on my back. My mind was racing, but my body was moving on autopilot. I sat in the living room, staring at the empty coffee table, waiting for them to join me. When they finally did, Clara sat at the far edge of the couch, avoiding my eyes, and the man took the chair across from me, his hands clasped tightly, like someone preparing for judgment. I looked at them both, my chest heavy with anger, confusion, and heartbreak. This wasn't how I imagined coming home. This wasn't the life I thought we had. My face was calm, I made sure of that. Years of naval training had taught me how to maintain composure in the most chaotic situations. But inside, I was a storm. Anger, disbelief, betrayal, each emotion fought for control. My voice came out low, deliberate, every word sharp and clear. "How long?" I asked, staring directly at her. "How did this start? And most importantly, why?" The room was silent for a moment, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. She wouldn't meet my gaze, her eyes fixed on her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her breathing was uneven, as though she was struggling to hold herself together. Then she broke. "It started as friendship," she said, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He was just someone to talk to." "Someone to talk to," I repeated, my voice cold, almost mocking. "Is that all it was?" "No," she admitted, her words barely above a whisper. Tears started to stream down her face. "At first he was just a friend. You were always gone and I was lonely. I felt abandoned." "Abandoned?" I said, raising my voice slightly, unable to stop the bitterness creeping in. I was out there risking my life, working to provide for us, and you felt abandoned? I try as much as possible to call you with every opportunity one get, and yet you're looking for who to talk to outside? She flinched at my words, but she didn't look away this time. You don't understand. I didn't want this to happen, but the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, and I felt like I was invisible. Every time you left, the silence in this house was deafening. He was just there, my fists clenched on the table, but I forced myself to stay seated. So you crossed a line, I said, my voice flat. You let this stranger into our home, into our bed because you felt lonely? She nodded slowly, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't plan for this to happen. I swear. I turned my gaze to the man sitting next to her. He was silent, his face a mix of guilt and resignation. I didn't need him to speak. His presence alone was an answer to the questions I hadn't asked yet. But still, I couldn't stop myself. And you? I said, my voice sharper now. Did you know she was married? Yes, he replied, his tone steady but regretful. I knew. I should have stayed away, but I didn't. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. Sorry, I said, my voice dripping with disdain. You're sorry. Do you think that makes any of this better? He didn't answer, and I didn't expect him to. My attention shifted back to her, the woman I had trusted with everything. The weight of her betrayal pressed down on me, like an anchor dragging me to the bottom of the ocean. She spoke again, her voice cracking. I know I've broken your trust. I know I've hurt you. But please believe me when I say it wasn't about you. It was about me and how I felt. I was weak. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Her words hung in the air, but they didn't reach me. Not really. Sorry felt so small, so meaningless, compared to what she had done. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, trying to make sense of everything she had just said. But deep down I already knew. There was no sense to be made of this. After hearing their confessions, I couldn't feel anything but a strange, hollow numbness. It wasn't anger, not yet. It wasn't sadness either. It was like everything inside me had shut down, as if my brain and my heart had decided they couldn't handle the weight of what had just happened. I stood up from the couch and looked at them one last time. My wife, the woman I'd trusted with everything, sat with her head down, tears streaming silently down her face. The man, a stranger to me in every way, sat awkwardly beside her, his hands folded like he was waiting for me to strike him or scream. But I did neither. I didn't have the energy for a confrontation. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. No shouting, no pleading, just those 6 words. I turned and walked to the bedroom, the same bedroom where this betrayal had unfolded behind my back. In the bedroom, I grabbed a duffel bag and started packing. I wasn't thinking about where I would go or what I would do next. I just knew I couldn't stay there, not another second. Every corner of that house felt tainted, like it had absorbed the betrayal and was suffocating me with it. I packed quickly, clothes, my toiletries, a few personal items. I remember standing in front of the nightstand for a moment, staring at the framed photo of us from our wedding day. Her smile was so radiant, and I looked so happy. It hit me then how far we'd fallen from that moment, how much had been lost. I left the photo behind. It didn't belong in my new reality. I walked past them in the living room without a word. She started to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a plea, but I didn't stop to listen. I opened the front door, stepped out, and shut it behind me. As I got into the car and started driving, the numbness began to wear off, replaced by a deep, raw ache in my chest. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of our marriage, trying to figure out where it had all gone wrong. Was it my fault? Could I have done more to make her feel less lonely? But every time I thought about forgiving her, the image of them together in our bedroom flashed in my mind, and I knew there was no going back. Over the next few days, I moved into a small motel near the naval base. It wasn't much, a cramped room with a creaky bed and peeling wallpaper, but it was quiet. That was all I needed. I spent most of my time staring at the walls, trying to process everything. Filing for divorce wasn't an easy decision. For years, my wife had been my anchor, the one person I believed would always have my back. But now, every memory of us felt tainted. The laughter, the intimacy, the promises. We had built our life on trust, and she had shattered it. I couldn't imagine sharing a home, a bed, or a life with her anymore. People say time heals all wounds, but I knew this wasn't a wound time could fix. Trust is like glass. Once it's broken, you can try to glue it back together, but the cracks will always be there, a constant reminder of what was lost. And I couldn't live with that. Not with her. Not in that house. Not after everything I'd seen and heard. So I did the only thing I could. I hired a lawyer, signed the papers, and began the process of letting go. Letting go of her. Letting go of us. Letting go of the life I thought we were building together. It hurt more than I can put into words, but deep down I knew it was the right thing to do. It's strange, isn't it? I've faced storms so fierce they made the sky look like it was on fire. I've stared into the black void of the sea at night, wondering if I'd live to see another sunrise. I've survived battles that could have easily ended me. Yet, here I am, defeated not by an enemy, but by the woman I thought was my ally for life. I've spent my life protecting others, being the rock for my country, for my team. But I couldn't protect my marriage. I couldn't see the cracks forming beneath the surface until it was too late. Out at sea, the rules are simple. You follow orders. You rely on your crew. You trust the chain of command. There's clarity in that, a sense of purpose that's unshakable. But in a marriage, there's no manual for betrayal. No protocol for how to piece yourself back together after someone you love shatters your trust. The pain is still there. It probably always will be. But I've made a promise to myself. I won't let my guard down again. I won't let my heart become vulnerable to betrayal, not like this. Out on the ocean, you learn quickly that complacency can cost you your life. I've learned that lesson in my marriage too. And so, I move forward one day at a time. The sea is calling me back, as it always does. Out there, the waves are unforgiving, the storms relentless, but at least they're honest. They don't pretend to be anything other than what they are. Out there, I know where I stand. And for now, that's all I need.